Costa Rica has many climates. It has the mountainous type climates where there's a bit of tundra at the very top in Chiripo. Then of course you've got Central Valley, San Jose, where it's quite cool considered. It's, about 22 degrees Celsius on average. Then you have the beach climates, which people love coming here to visit the beach. But I am personally not a huge fan. Unfortunately for me, my husband had to go get his fingerprints taken for immigration purposes in Paso Canoas. And Paso Canoas is on the other side of the country from where I was staying at the Airbnb. So we had to get in a car and drive all the way down to nearly Panama. Unfortunately, that highway goes right down by the beaches. So no matter what I did, we were going to be at sea level. That meant that I was going to be sweating quite a lot on this trip. You might be wondering, why don't you like the beach? Well, first of all, there's riptides, which, try to kill you. Then there's tsunamis, which, again, try to kill you. There's jellyfish, which try to kill you. And sharks. Don't even get me started on the amount of fish pee in the ocean. I really don't want to be swimming in it. I always come out sticky, and then I step on the sand, and it burns my feet. I don't know. I'm just not a fan. Everything about the beach is uncomfortable, and I'm only interested in the tide pools. But sometimes the moon doesn't cooperate and the tide pools are visible at midday, which is when the UV index is super high. So I can't go and look at the tide pools. So what am I even doing? Anyways, I can just say that I'm not a fan of the ocean and I would much rather view it from a distance, like say 50 kilometers across and, a solid kilometer up, maybe even 1.5 kilometers up. Nice mountain climate with good views, so I can see the tsunami from a distance. Like I said, we had to go to Paso Canoas, otherwise we would have had to wait till August to get my husband's fingerprints done, and that wasn't going to work. So we packed our bags and headed down to Grecia to pick up our rental car. Descending the mountains to get to the Route 34 was actually the most interesting part of the trip, just because you forget how high up you really are until you have to descend to go down to sea level. It was also at around this time that I discovered a massive design flaw in our rental car. For some reason, they had installed an armrest for the driver, but no armrest for the passenger. And there was no center console or anything, so my left arm was just flapping around. I don't really like that. I couldn't steal my husband's armrest because his arm is quite long and he needed that entire space in order to be able to shift up and down in the car and, of course, to apply the handbrake. So what was I left with? I was left with leaning on this arm, and this arm was on the door, but that's not really comfortable for a 5-hour trip. 0 out of 10 for car design. Who did that? Why would you do that? Just add a second armrest. It's not that hard. Other than the car armrest situation, we were also getting hungry. And although we tend to avoid Jaco like the plague that it is, we did see some signs advertising an Indian restaurant in Jaco. Now, for whatever reason, Indian food isn't all that common in Costa Rica, and I love Indian food. It's delicious. So we decided, well, I guess we'll tolerate Jaco nonsense for a quick bite to eat. The restaurant itself was gorgeous. It was very comfortable, has a nice AC. The location was, main drag of Jaco, which meant parking was awful, but what can you do? It's Costa Rica. So we went in, ordered some delicious food. We did not try the Voss water because I didn't want to add an extra 0 to our bill, which was already very high. And we left quite satisfied and quite a bit poorer because nothing like paying tourist country prices on a trip. So that hurt, but it is what it is. Well fed and nicely cooled by the AC, we decided to get back on the road and head towards our hotel in Ciudad Cortez. We were going to stay at Las Palmas, but that was quite a ways away, and at around the part where we hit Dominical Beach, we were kind of uncomfortable and decided to go stretch our legs. So we parked at the beach and did a quick walk. And as you can tell, I wasn't particularly impressed by anything there. There was sand, there was rocks, there was sand and rocks in my sandals. I just don't like the beach. Pro tip, never park underneath a coconut tree. When you're parking at the beach, always look up and make sure that there's no coconuts ready to drop on your car. We checked, and that's why our car wasn't crushed, but sometimes tourists forget to do that, and you end up walking past a bunch of cars parked directly below fully loaded palm trees, and it's like, I hope you have good insurance on that rental car. We arrived at Las Palmas just at around sunset, and I was pleasantly surprised by the hotel. It looked good in pictures, but it looked even better in real life. They had a full restaurant with a pool, a nice little gazebo with some hammocks, and the room was very comfortable because it also had AC, something that was very important and would be lacking in the rest of our trip. After checking in, we were feeling a little hungry, so we went to go grab a dinner at the restaurant. I got some patacones because, well, I wasn't that hungry, and we enjoyed a nice evening out on the deck, watching the sunset and enjoying the sound of squirrels dropping nuts on the chef's car. Breakfast was also quite good. I enjoyed a cup of coffee alongside my gallo pinto, maduro, and scrambled eggs, and then we checked out of our hotel. A few years ago, I had been in the area and I had driven past a few signs that advertised Finca, so I had looked it up and I discovered that it's a famous archaeological site in the south of Costa Rica. And I decided that, well, this time, while driving my own car and not being stuck on a bus, we were going to go check it out. The river deltas in this part of the country had hosted massive indigenous populations, but of course, with the arrival of the Europeans, those populations died away due to disease and war. They still exist, but they have been shuffled around the country, much like in North America, and put on different reserves, which is a whole other political situation that I'm not qualified to speak on. These communities had massive trade connections all over the continents. They would get stuff up from Mexico and all the way down from the Inca Empire. They were very well connected, but they got famous for one of their most iconic creations: stone spheres. These spheres come in all different sizes. Some of them can fit in your hands, and the largest one is 2.66 meters. It's massive. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see it because it was behind a gate, but we did see some of the other large spheres. The granite that these stones were carved out of was brought from the nearby mountains and carved in location. Now, it looks like as the communities accumulated these stones, they began arranging them in specific ways, presumably to line up with the stars or maybe something like the summer solstice, but we're not quite sure. Unfortunately, a lot of these stones were moved out of place during the 1900s, and the stones were just, they still exist. They were eventually purchased back by the Costa Rican government, and a few of them are in the museums, and of course there are a few that went international and we haven't gone back yet. But the stones themselves don't tell you much. They're round spheres. What would have helped a lot is if people had documented where the spheres were found so that we could know exactly how they were being used. Unfortunately for us, only a couple of stones remain in their original place, and here you can see them, just the tops of the round balls sticking out of the soil. I can easily imagine how a long time ago an artisan in one of these villages, out of boredom, carved out a small round ball, and then the neighbor came by and said, "Oh, that's cool, can you make it bigger?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, sure." And then next thing you know, everyone's carving spheres. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago that people were obsessed with making shiny mud balls out of mud and polishing them. The Japanese thing called dorodango, if you remember that. If you don't, look it up. And so you just end up with these communities with a whole bunch of these stones, and next thing you know, they're being given special significance. So, of course, that's just speculation on my part, but I mean, people like shiny rocks. They like well-shaped rocks. It's not that hard to imagine. Definitely just takes a bit of practice and perseverance to be able to carve one of these. And, well, they didn't have Instagram to waste their time scrolling through, so of course they were able to do this. My toxic trait is looking at these and thinking, oh yeah, I could do that. I'm sure it requires no skill, effort, or, perseverance. Part of park maintenance involves making sure that the balls stay nice and clean and free of plant material growing on them. But I do wonder what kind of job title you get if your job is to scrub dirty balls. In the museum, there was also a map that included all sorts of different locations in the area of historical sites. We did try to go to every single one. Unfortunately, all we got were just a bunch of gates with a whole lot of no trespassing signs. So we figured we weren't going to, try any trespassing and tripping any cameras. I do hear that the largest sphere is behind one of these gates, but well, I guess we just have to settle for some pictures now, don't we? We did stop to check out this train that was set up on the side of the road. Looks like it was commissioned in 1935, and it worked for Finca and all the other nearby fincas to transport bananas and plantains. It was only decommissioned in the 1980s. Ah yes, this kind of playground builds character. It might, burn your skin off if you try to play during the day, but definitely builds character. And maybe builds tetanus, I'm not sure. Either way, I think I'll skip trying to slide. It's probably at around 40 degrees Celsius. After lunch, we headed off to our second hotel, which was in Golfito. We were greeted by a whole flock of different birds, as well as some cats and dogs. Honestly, I can say that if I ever got myself anything like these ducks, I'd never be bored a day in my life ever again. Just having those ducks walking around the property in their single file was hilarious. And every time I looked out the window and saw them, my day got instantly better. Sadly, no number of ducks could have fixed a massive oversight on my part. The room did not have air conditioning. No rooms at this location had air conditioning, just a hard-working fan. I don't know how that mistake happened, but that was unfortunate. Otherwise, the room was fine. It's just that it was quite hot. It was well into the 30s, and going by the humidity reports, it felt like we were in the mid-40s. So that was very, very uncomfortable. After a sweaty night's sleep, we got in the car and we drove to a nearby beach that was down a very long forested road. Day 3 of our trip is starting off quite warm. We are quite literally at a beach. It's too warm for me, and it's only like 9:30 a.m. Golfito is the town where we're in, and it is right near the border to Panama, about an hour or so away. Which I know for some of you North American guys, that sounds like, oof, 100 kilometers? That's not close. No. An hour on Costa Rican roads can be as little as 20 kilometers. Because sometimes the roads have a very low speed limit, and despite it being, a highway, you're not going at highway speeds. Not always anyways. So we're in Golfito, and it is famous for having a duty-free shop. So you can purchase a microwave for a certain percentage cheaper than in any other place, just because here they can be purchased without the importation tax and all that fun stuff. So, well, we're here to buy a microwave amongst other small things. But of course they want you to buy the big things like fridges and washing machines. We don't really have space for that right now, so we are focusing mostly on the microwave. It's been almost a month without one, and I miss it. The one good thing I can say about this beach is not a lot of sand. Freaking hate sand. That's the one thing Anakin got right in the Star Wars prequels. Sand sucks. Ooh, do I see a snack? He looks like a snack. Not for me, maybe for a seagull. It's very pretty blue. Now, some of you might be wondering, Marian, why are you wearing long sleeves at the beach? First of all, they're not long sleeves. They're 3/4 sleeves, or half sleeves, I suppose. And secondly, do you know what a UV ray index is? Because I sure do. And I don't like what it says. It's barely just past 9:30. And the UV index is already past 6. It goes up to 12 for you guys who don't know. And I like my skin cancer-free. So as much as I could slather myself in sunscreen, I could also just wear a protective layer of clothing. And yeah, that means I wear longer sleeves at the beach. Sue me. It sounds better than having to dig out a bunch of moles because of skin cancer. After a quick lunch, we headed into the Golfito duty-free shopping mall, which looks really more like a prison than anything, with its cement walls and its kind of fortress-style structure. It's really weird, but on the inside, it's full of about maybe 20 or so smaller stores, and each one of them is loaded with appliances like fridges, stoves, air conditioning units, and those are all items that you can buy duty-free. There is a limit, so every person has to register the day of or the day before, and they have a maximum of about 1,000 USD that they can spend as duty-free. Now, we were not going to spend that much. We didn't need anything big. We just really needed a microwave. So I registered the day before, and so when we went in, it was straightforward, straight to the stores. Unfortunately, like I said, it was a very hot day, and we were sweating. It took a while, but we did finish the shopping, and we loaded ourselves back into the car, cranked the AC, and made our way back to our hotel. Later that evening, we went for a walk alongside the beach, and we enjoyed an evening dinner at a Chinese restaurant right by the docks. After another sweaty night in the hotel, we got to breakfast, and I was harassed by the orange chicken for some grains of rice. So not only were the dogs begging, but the chickens were begging too. We saw these weird rodent things by the chicken feed. They were having a good old snack, but not even the cat was chasing them, so I guess they were all just friends. It was still early in the morning, and we didn't have the meeting till 11 a.m., but we decided we'd much rather be early than late. So on the road we went, back towards Paso Canoas. It only took us about an hour to get there, and we found some parking, had to pay for it, but that's fine. And we walked to the local police station. Now, I didn't film any of this because I thought that would be kind of rude and possibly also illegal, so you'll just have to take my word for it. We went up to the little window at the police station, told them we had an appointment. They showed us a door, and inside was lovely air-conditioned air because the rest of the building was not air-conditioned. And we sat there for about 20 minutes while the police officer processed my husband's documents. Looked at his IDs, looked at some of the paperwork we'd completed, and of course, turned his fingers black with some ink. With that done and a receipt as proof that we had done it, we got back in the car and started the long 6-hour drive back up into the mountains. We arrived home at around 7 p.m., so it was well after dark, and I cannot tell you how relieved I was to open my door and to have just fresh mountain air flood the car. It was such a relief to not have to deal with the incessant heat of the Pacific seaside. How do you feel about beaches? Do you agree with me that they suck, or are you like Colin, who lives to go for a swim at the beach? Either way, like and subscribe, and please come back next time to find out where we're moving, because we have arranged for a place to live that is no longer at our Airbnb.